So there's the beginning guitar riff in Slow Hands by Niall Horan, 2017, but it sounds quite old, doesn't it? It sounds as if it comes from another age, that guitar, and actually it does. Muddy Waters brought that sound over with him in 1958, 60 years ago, and it's based on something called the blues scale. Now on guitar, conveniently, the blues scale is in one place if you use all 4 fingers. There's no point in learning fret numbers, just learn the finger positions and the order in which they occur. And then you can translate it to whichever key you're in. So the blues scale goes like this. So I've used all my fingers. Whenever a fret comes up, I use the finger that's assigned to it. With the plectrum, always make sure you have a down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up arrangement, and then you're making full use of your right hand as well. So you can make solos out of that. Now the best thing to do is not to run up and down the scale like I've just done, but to use a little bit of it. So I've got a couple of blues backing tracks here so that you can hear it in action. Now I've only used the notes in that blues scale. In fact, I think I used all of them at least once. But you can use little bits of it to create a much better, sort of more soulful effect. Don't feel you have to play everything all the time. So if I do that once again, but just with a couple of notes, you can hear that it has similar impact. So if you're starting soloing with a blues, pick the middle 2 strings. So you've got the index finger and your annular finger. And maybe your last finger on the that fret there. I'm not going to number it. I'm not going to number the frets. So with the numbering of the frets, it doesn't matter because I can play it in another key. Put it wherever I like according to what key we're in. The advantage of the blues scale is that it works over all of those 3 chords in the blues, chords 1, 4 and 5. So you've got chord 1, chord 4 and chord 5, arranged in the order of the 12-bar blues sequence. So it just works over all of those chords. So it's a really good idiomatic, get out of jail free, sounds good scale. Don't worry about any of the theory. It's really, that will get in the way. That is the minor blues scale. There is a major blues one as well, which goes like this. If I'm in the minor key, as I was just then, that is designed for minor chords, but that was kind of a bit majory, that one. Still sounded all right, what I did. But there is another scale where if you start on the last finger, that would sound better over the first chord. So this means that you're going to have to start shifting stuff about within your blues. Is there any point? Well, actually there is, because it gives you more of a range of sounds rather than just staying in that one place. So initially practice it in that place in the minor blues that we just looked at. Then stick the major blues in on the first chord only, and I'll demo that now so you can hear the difference. So I was flittering around between those two things. So the minor blues scale that we just looked at, things like B.B. King's Thrill Is Gone is a classic minor blues sequence, and you can use it over any minor thing. Lots of guitarists who are doing sessions in studios at the moment will be playing bluesy sort of riffs because they just sound good. Listen to that Niall Horan one at the beginning. It sounds great. That guitar sounds amazing. So here is the Thrill Is Gone then in C minor. So C is here. It's a good idea to learn where your initial note is, so when somebody tells you the key, you just know exactly where to play your scales. So this one is in C minor, which is at 8th fret, but using the same finger pattern that we had before. Now there, I was including bending notes. That was the only sort of major difference from the scale. In addition to things like vibrato and trills, for example. There's your vibrato or trills. That sort of thing. Now, the bending notes that I bent that one. So on the 3rd string, I bent it up by a step, or rather, I bent it up to the next note on the next string. Johnny Be Good. Listen to the guitar solo to that. It's that. And the other note that I bent was the last finger on this string to match the last note of the scale. Make sure you haven't got old strings, otherwise you'll just pop one. So you can get a lot more stylistic sort of wailing, sort of bluesy, sad type tones by employing all of these different techniques. Now, the other thing that we've got here is the fact that, like the Niall Horan tune, I mean, I've made up a backing track here, a very basic backing track, sort of pertaining to Uptown Funk. Don't laugh when it comes on. But this is in D minor. So this uses the same pattern again, but at 10th fret. That's in the blues scale, which is itself a derivative of the minor pentatonic, one of the oldest musical scales known. Even the top line is on the blues scale. So there is an example of how the blues can be used in a modern context. So you'd also get tunes where the chord sequence is a little bit more complicated, where you might need to play the blues scale in 2 keys or more, depending on the chord you've got. So I've got a blues here that is goes from A major essentially to B minor. So you've got A major, remember the major blues starting on your last finger, to the minor blues on B. There are lots of the same notes in those scales, but you get a lot more freedom if you use both of those. You'll find that one blues scale would maybe conflict slightly with one of those chords maybe. So in order to have, and also a much wider range of notes, I was going from 10th fret here all the way down to 2nd here, so you're starting to scale out from your initial positions. Now any of these scales can be transposed up an octave, so you can get those higher tones, or you can work out a way where instead of starting on the 6th string here, you start on the 5th, 7 frets up. But because of the tuning between these two strings, you're going to need to add a fret when you do that pattern. If I did this and this, I need to add a fret to that. Some people do this. Actually move your hand up to compensate for that change. But if you do that, you're essentially just trying to adapt a scale to play somewhere else, whereas actually that somewhere else may have other notes that you can use. Starts getting a bit jazzy there, but you can keep it in a bluesy style. So those two scales, instead of starting on the 1st string at that position and then that one for the minor, I started there and there instead. So I started my scales, or based them upon the starting note on the 5th string. So I gradually work my way from there down to here. Now that's I just made that backing track up, just 4 chords, but you will come across things like this where you think, how do I play a solo over that? And the answer is it's usually either one blues scale if you're lucky, or it might be 2. So with the playing of this, in addition to the left-hand techniques of vibrato and bends and trills and ornamentation and that sort of thing, you can also use your fingers on your right hand to get a bit more of a gritty tone by sort of pulling the strings slightly away from the neck and letting it snap back against the fingerboard. So you can really get some bitey tone to sort of come out over that mix. So sometimes the plectrum is not enough on its own. When I first started playing guitar, I used my fingers only, no plectrum, on the advice of my uncle. Good advice. To get a real gritty, bitey tone. So now I just use a combination of plectrum and fingers. Now with extra notes that you can use between the maybe this pattern here and this one, there's going to be an area in between that you can link those two up. Something like that, where you actually end up playing a scale that goes along the string instead of across the neck. So it's worth knowing your position. So let's say if we've got this scale, it's worth learning it laterally. So that means that you know where all those positions are between two different places, those fret numbers. Also, those slides can sound quite good as well. Robert Cray used to do that all the time. He used to go play one note and then slide it down a step or half a step, or even further. So all those different things can be a really nice addition to your scales. So there we go. There is an introduction to blues guitar, and if you freeze frame at the end, I'll put all the tabs up for you.